Good morning, Obe-san in New York. I'm sure it's pretty cold over there.
Yes, good morning, Dr. M. It's 2 or 3 degrees Celsius outside. Yeah, it's cold. It's cold.
Yeah, and here is probably 29 degrees in Mumbai.
Oh, wow.
So I envy you, and you can envy me. So, so thank you, Obe-san. This is the probably the fourth time that you have been kind enough to come on Dr. M's vodcast. You came once on SMET with Lani Wilson, and then you gave us the fundamentals of the points, the line, the area, and then
Yes.
the three steps.
Yeah. No, the mechanism and the systems thing. Yeah. I would touch that a little bit today too. So
And then the second time, or rather the first time you came, you were talking about the Japanese culture of where
culture, yeah.
it is, and the third time that you came was that Nemabashi was a waste.
Nemawashi, yes.
And
yes.
then we did the SMET with Lani Wilson of supervision, a lost skill.
Skills, yeah.
So thank you very much to take time off and getting up early in the morning. Thank you very much. And let me do the thing of introducing you. Here we go. So, Obe-san, you are on the 55th episode of Dr. M's vodcast, and I started it about 2.5 years ago, and I have been getting guests from all across except South Africa and South America. Otherwise, it's fairly a good stress. I think I've never been to US, but I seem to get more guests from US. So
that's good.
Otherwise, I have from US, Canada, Jamaica, Europe, India, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. And my only thing was to learn from all of y'all, the celebrities, understand continuous improvement, how to sustain and support and sustain continuous improvement, and then share it back to the community. And then let me have the Harvard Business School alumni, Obe-san, and the rich experience that you're bringing to my show. As TPS, you follow the TPS philosophy, and all of us know your father. Everybody in America probably knows your father. So, and then you have put in 20 years in this and worked in different sort of industry. And I wish you come to India and we can show you more industries. So that'll be fun. One of these days, you should land in India.
Definitely, yes.
Because I say you have done diverse countries and cultures. In India, probably you can find more cultures than anywhere else. So come over, Obe-san. So open invitation.
Yes, I will.
And the subject that you're going to talk about is the philosophy behind the word GENBA. We spell it in two ways. We spell it as GEMBA and GENBA. And what you're going to talk about is BA or BA.
BA. Yeah.
And you had written a blog on that, and I was very thrilled because this synchronizes with what we started calling lean thinking. And there's a lot of elements in that which I was curious to know a little bit in detail, because then you see, reading is different and you explaining to me is different, and then we share together. And I will never forget to tell you that you are on Dr. M's podcast. Okay?
Yeah.
Dr. M podcast. a vodcast with a mission, connecting continuous improvement professionals across the world. That's my objective or mission, connecting a continuous improvement professional across the world. And you're on Dr. M's vodcast. So I stopped sharing and let's listen to you, the philosophy of Ba. Over to you, Obesan.
Thank you, Dr. M, and thank you for this opportunities. I always enjoy coming up on your show. Now let's see if is it sharing properly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so today, I think in the past podcast with you, I talk typically about the Japanese culture behind TPS, Toyota Production System. Try to explain a little bit so that we have better understanding of the system's background or the context of how it happened and what we can take away from the cultures, because a lot of Japanese culture discussion I hear is very superficial things. I really don't like it. I like the way I want to go deep on culture topics. And one of the philosophical topic that came up was this concept of ba. I didn't pay much attention until actually this conversation happened. And this conversation happened between two Japanese guys. One was my father, you mentioned. He is a TPS expert. He worked at Toyota for almost like half century, and he was heading the OMC, not heading OMC, sorry, Toyota Supplier Support Center. That's the consulting arm that Toyota made in '92 to implement TPS in different industries in North America. And he was having a conversation with this Japanese plant manager. This company is not Toyota, but it's a Japanese company. And obviously we use the same languages, but we have very big gap of understanding. And one of the questions my coach asked him was, do you know GENBA? A very typical question. And the reaction from the other Japanese guy was, of course I know GENBA. Yeah, I go to the shop floor. I check all the KPIs. I'm attending all the reports and meetings and stuff like that. Why do you think I don't know GENBA? And just to add a context, this plant manager comes to the GENBA, but typically he spent like, I would say 2-3 steps into the area. He just stands there for like 5 minutes and go back to his meeting room. And that was his morning routine. And then he come out for the reports out and stuff. So that was his understanding of GENBA. And my coach was, scratching his head. Then he asked the next question, do you know Ba? And that's when the Japanese guy was like, sort of like, what is this, this old Japanese talking about, right? Ba, it's simple. It means the place, right? And when he responded like that, my coach was shaking his head. No, there's a lot more meaning behind this concept of Ba. Have you read this book? Have you thought about this philosophy? And he just piled on, and eventually the Japanese guy sort of went through this concept and stuff by himself and came back and said, oh my God, I didn't understand anything about Ba. And so it's not a common knowledge. There's a lot of things that sort of we use subconsciously, but I'm trying to highlight that the deeper root of this word, so that when we say let's go to GENBA, there's a hidden philosophy behind it. And when I try to structure some of the meanings behind this word Ba, there's a cultural aspect. And then based on the cultural aspect, there's a business aspect. But because we're talking about Toyota Production System and business oriented people are listening to this podcast, I want to hold on that. And there's a science aspect to this word Ba. And we Japanese use this word in very different occasions and also in a very different, diverse context. But not all of them is relevant to when we go to GENBA. And that's why I want to start highlighting. So I will start focusing first on the culture, and I will start from the story about the symbol Ba. This is a symbol, Chinese symbol. It came from China. And when you look at this symbol, it has many components in it. The first component is on the left side, which in Japanese we call it tsuchi or do. It means soil. And then the upper part of the right hand is the sun, heat, the sun. And the lower part of the right hand represents the hand. The hand is doing, I want to, can you see how I'm doing this thing? They're putting two hands like this and holding to each other.
Yeah.
And this is because it's like a China way of praying or like worshiping the bosses and stuff. They typically do this kind of hand shape, and this represents the hand shape. So what this word ba meant in China originally is the combination of the soil, and there's a sun, and people are sort of praying. So it represented the holy place or the sacred place where they have a soil which forms like a table, and you put, the sacrifice the god of sun, and you pray into it. So the ba originally, when it came from China, it meant to have a meaning called holy place or the sacred place, a special place. From there, us the Japanese start interpreting things the way we want to, and we apply this holy place in the Japanese Shintoism, the religion that we originally have. And the Japanese Shintoism is polytheism. There's a lot of gods. It's different from the other religions where we have only one god. And one of the interesting about Japanese, the Shinto is that we explain a lot of natural phenomena as it happens because the gods is doing the work. One of the example that I'm showing a picture, I should have made a bit of different picture, but they say that the island of Japan was born because the gods sort of collected the salt in the middle of the ocean, and that became the island of the Japanese island. And they say that that was created because those gods work. Another example is like the wind blows when the god of wind works. And from here, if you think about and how we treat those God's place in Japan, we typically keep them in a nice, clean format, organized, right? You don't want trash there. Actually, if when the human beings enter this kind of place, we have to always wash our hands, wash or purify might be a right word. And we want to keep this God's place always nice and neat. But also, because we say God's work, we start saying place that we work, we human work, have to be also a sacred place, a holy place. And this is the philosophy that come back from connects to is like this is a picture of a Japanese blacksmith. And when you look at the upper part of this picture, you see the strange white paper on the left side, and then there's this sort of like a leaf. This comes from the shrine. It's sort of representing the god of probably the blacksmith, and they put this kind of smaller version of a shrine in the middle of the workspace. And this kind of culture is still exists in Japan. If you go to any factory or office, they will have this kind of shrine place. And it doesn't mean that we are worshiping or anything. It's just a way of, how do I say, let's keep this place clean, nice place, just like how we treat the God's place. And it's a way of sort of like, I would say worship, but respect, right? When you show respect, it's a place that needs to be nice to work, easy to work, and it needs to be clean. Is somewhat connected to our religion and our philosophy. And that's one thing about Ba is that it's not just a place, it needs to be a very respected place. And that respect comes from the cleanness or the tidiness. And I would say that's the foundation of 5S, right? We say 5S is important. And when you think about all those things, it's deeply connected to this religious foundation. So one of the interesting aspects of bar is that bar is a place of respect. When you respect somebody or when you want to be respected, there's a way that the place should be, and that's nice and clean and organized, and basically the 5S thinking. And then from here, there's another mysterious, I'm not a huge fan of it, way of using the word ba in Japanese culture. And typically we use the word like ba no kuki. And what that direct translation of that will be the air of ba. It doesn't mean anything because we don't clean the air or anything. And when I Google this word, I found almost like 200 books on this topics. Some of them is talking about the air pollution, so I knocked them out. But still, you have like more than 100 books talking about this air of Ba, right? And most of these books is about some kind of relationship, moods, atmospheres of a particular location. So somehow we Japanese people worry about this group dynamics, or we want to be sure that this atmosphere, relationship, the mood of that particular place is in a good way. Therefore, and the good way means peaceful. And just to make sure that this is not an ancient philosophy, even in 2007, for example, the buzzword of the year, one of the buzzword of the year was KY. Simply said, alphabet KY. And the meaning behind the KY comes from K is kuki, the air, and Y is yomenai, cannot read. And what the full sentence of that meaning is that you can't read the air of Ba. And we are talking about this in 2007, which is like recently, and we still use this, and people still read a lot of books about this. How do we make sure that we don't destroy the atmosphere of the Ba? And it's, in my opinion, it's somewhat ridiculous, but it's also a difficult aspect of Japanese culture. And this was happening in this, the first example that I used, the two Japanese that was talking, in that particular company, they were doing a training to the locals called How to Work with Japanese. And one of them that they were teaching was you have to respect the ba. And it's really, how can I say? I shouldn't be too negative, but annoying. But I will tell you why. And so what ba means, it's not just the place, it includes the people in it. And the atmosphere and the mood of the people have to be peaceful. And this connects to a word that you use a little bit when you introduce myself, is called the nemawashi. Why Japanese people do nemawashi is because we want to keep the ba peaceful, where the people gather and discuss have to be peaceful. So when there's a disagreement or something that needs to be negotiated, we do it underground. Underground of the land is the roots are there. And that's why we go around the roots is called nemawashi. And obviously, we talked more about nemawashi in your podcast. So if you want to know about nemawashi, please go there. But this philosophy of ba and nemawashi is very connected philosophy. It's like the both sides of the coin. So if you want to know about the nemawashi, you should know about the ba. Oh, sorry. Now, the reason why I'm negative about nemawashi or about this ba philosophy is that if you think about how Taichi Ono and he behaved, you understand it. This guy destroyed so many bar in his life. Right? There was agreement among these people to keep the current way. He comes in and said, "No, this is the wrong approach. Let's change it." And he had so many fights that original days, right? The labor union hated him. And there was a lot of conflict, and they called this methodology as the Ono method, and a lot of people hated it. And if you think about why he was hated, it's not because he was illogical. He was destroying the bar. And when you think about this, TPS guys in general are very much bar destroyers. They don't like peace and harmony of right? They want to surface the problem, right? They don't want to do underground negotiation. They want to surface the problem and have a active discussion among those different opinions, and they welcome that. It's actually a good thing to do. And so when I think about this bar philosophy, it's one of the things that I struggle is like how TPS originated in Japan and why they were able to overcome this bar philosophy is a big question that I always had. And the bottom line of this thinking is that bar change based on trust. When there's the trust, the bar will start to change and the people will start to surface the problem, right? And if you think about Ono's behavior, yes, he was have a very unique mindset, but his bosses, Eiji Toyota or Saito Shoichi, these guys never criticized Ono. They trusted him and they said, okay, Ono-san, you can do what you want to do. For example, Eiji came to the shop floor once when Ono said, don't use this new machine, which was approved by Eiji. And he asked the question, I heard that you don't allow the people to use a new machine. And Ono said, yes, I have some thought about it. I want to use that as an example of training. And Eiji said, okay, fine, I'll come back. That's why, let's try whatever you want to think, and walked away. He didn't question why you doing it or anything. He just said, okay, I trust you. And he just showed that trust to the people that he trusts Ono and walked away. And another interesting thing about Ono's episode is that right, when he was talking about when he goes to the show floor as a boss, he's saying that people should come to you with problems, right? And that's because when they trust you, they will bring you the problems. And I had this lucky opportunity to walk around the shop floor with one of the plant manager at Toyota, and when I walked with him, like every team leaders and group leaders will come to him and say, hey, sir, this is a problem that happened this morning. This is how I'm doing the problem solving. Can you see it? Oh, this is a Kaizen that I'm implementing right now. Can you check it? Can you give me a feedback? And he was like, oh, sorry, I'm going around with the tour with this guy, me. But right now, but I will make sure I'll come back. And, as we walk around, almost every every new team that we walk by, the team leader, group leader will come trying to show, what are they working on. And there was like enormous amount of trust in this bar that, you can see that people are interacting between each other and exposing issues, but they are not afraid. They know that this is a great learning opportunity, and he respects this kind of thinking and struggles. So they were very open about it. So one of the things that we go to when we go to GENBA is we are not there just to check on KPIs and that kind of thing. When there's a trust in the bar, the atmosphere will change and they will come with more problems and they will come with more ideas, and they are not afraid to show that because they trust each other. And this is the only place where you can see the real trust, right? If there's no trust, I mean, you can say, oh, we trust each other in a nice meeting room, but behind the scene, you would act differently. And that was how we were promoted in Japan, was like, okay, even if you don't trust each other, pretend that you trust each other and do the underground negotiation, nemawashi thing. But in the TPS way, the owner's way, or the Toyota way, was that, oh, no, don't do the underground negotiation thing. Surface your concerns, surface your problem. Let's have a discussion. Let's work on it, solve it, and move on. So it's a very different culture from the typical Japanese style, right? They like to hide the problems, just like any other culture, I would say. But here, they're trying to surface the problem, and that's something that it's very important for me for this bar thinking is that when there is trust, the bar will change, right? And the reason why I go to GENBA is that's the only way to know if this is really, there's a trust in this particular place or not. So there's a huge cultural aspect that we want to see when we go to GENBA, and that's not something that you can email or you can check on by KPIs. It needs to be on that particular place and see how the people are interacting. And because we use this ba word in this human interactions. And from here, I go to the second stage about the Japanese business thinking, or some of the business academic discovered thing. But because we use this word ba in this human interactions, a lot of philosophers and sociologists start to pay attention to this word ba, because that's the form of Japanese society was somewhat, right? I can explain it in that way. And there's a lot of philosophy behind it. And as these philosophers and sociologists did the researches, a lot of business academics start to pay attention to this word ba. And the business academics story, how they reach this ba thinking is come from the research about the Japanese management system, right? And until I would say the late 80s, right? The Japan was growing so fast that the Japanese business management model was highly respected. But then the bubble economy came and we stagnate for the last 30 years, unfortunately. But now people are like, oh, Japanese management system sucks. Typical example of Japanese management model is like lifetime employment, seniority driven, in-house labor union, familyism, right? They treat the employee as a family. Keiretsu, which means the group company, corporate group companies of suppliers, employee benefits, and ringi. Ringi means you put a lot of stamp on the paper to get approval. Sorry, I said it in a cynical way. But this kind of Japanese management is the reason why it destroyed the economy, was the explanation that we typically heard in I would say, the 90s. And we destroyed it. A lot of companies destroyed this lifetime employment thing. We have more temporary laborers. In-house labor union is still exists, but familyism is destroyed. Keiretsu is destroyed. A lot of employment benefit was destroyed. But then some of the academics start saying, wait a minute, hold on. There are some companies that are still successful in Japan, even with this recessions and the struggles of Japanese. And when you look at those successful Japanese companies, that includes Toyota, Honda, or Sony, or whatever the company that was, they seem to be keeping this system. They have this capability, they're still keeping the original Japanese system, but they were able to adjust to different economic circumstances. So how is that possible that we criticizing all those things, and the companies who destroy these things typically are this happen like in the bank segment or the financial segment, and they're all struggling. And none of the Japanese banks or the finance institute is respected in the global market because they are not competitive in the global market. So a lot of researchers start saying, okay, how is that possible that we criticize this Japanese management system, but the companies that keeping it is actually more successful, and the one that destroys it is completely struggling. So what this new group of academics start saying is, okay, let's say this Japanese management is a kata, a model that we keep to treat the employees, develop the employees, and respond to the markets. They start saying these are Japanese models, kata, that we have, but then there's also this thing called ba, which is outside the model that these successful company had. And there's an interesting thing is going on in ba that sort of interacts with the kata and becomes successful in the changing market. One of the academic, and I think one of the first one to apply this kind of ba, discover the ba in the business environment, his name was Hiroyuki Itami. And he starts saying that, okay, in the traditional management thinking, right, we focus on the kata too much. And kata, the model in the money, right? And that includes the cash flows and stuff. And also command and orders of the organization. We pay too much focus on that. Instead, the successful company have created focus more on ba. And here he starts saying it's the information and psychology among the people. How do you create and how can I say, information and psychology also have kata, but how can they create a little bit more free stages where the people and management can interact with each other and share information there and share the psychological or emotional connections to adapt themselves to the new changing environment and change the kata. And Itami starts saying this and using this traditional Japanese philosophy of ba, he was starting to explain that a lot of successful, not just Japanese, but also business around the world have this unique bar, a space or the environment where people can exchange information and psychologies. And this is very interesting for me. And just to add as a TPS person, I will say that the carriers of information is not just people. Material carries information, right? The defect itself is full of information. Machine itself also carries the information. It's not just the signals, it's the way that the machine acts or makes a noise, or the water, the oil leakage, or the deformed uh, mode carries the information. Or the methodology, right? How do you design the quality system? How do you design the maintenance system? Those things also carry information. So the interaction between information and psychological connection exists between not just in between men, but I think TPS thinks that materials, machine methodology also carries information, and how these things interact between each other is GENBA. Another interesting, and this guy is far more famous around the world. Why? Because he started this movement called the knowledge management. His name is Ikujiro Nonaka, and inside his knowledge management, he also talks about the ba. And successful companies like that he discovered that have created, there's also a kata, a model of training the people or how they treat the knowledge, but there's also a ba, which they have 4 stages of ba that they say, all right? Originating ba, a place where they generate a new knowledge. A dialoguing ba, it's a place where two gentlemen or two people are talking about this particular knowledge, because a lot of knowledge start in the tacit stage, and to make it explicit, you need to have a dialogue among different people to highlight what has been hidden, tacit knowledge, and then converting that to explicit know-how. And then there is this systemizing bar, where you're converting this tacit know-how to explicit and training other people to follow this newly discovered explicit knowledge. And then exercising bar, it's the bar where you use those knowledges and get the business done. So inside this knowledge management philosophy, Nonaka and his group start discovering that there's a lot of company have created this kind of unique bar inside the company. And that's why they're successful. They didn't stick to the kata. They keep generating new knowledges, and they discovered that, defined it, and then systemize it. And that's why they are able to adapt to the new condition. Now, just to add another again, as a TPS person, I always follow what Taichi Ono said, and Ono said, one time about the 3 bar: imagination of GENBA, convergence of the GENBA, and the decision of the GENBA. And when I think about this 4 bar that Nonaka and his group talked about, I think Mr. Ono was why you need 4 bar? You only need 1 bar, and that's GENBA, where you create the idea, right? The creativity, the imagination is the creation of the ideas or the knowledge, right? You dialogue. Owner will talk to a lot of people, or team leader will talk to the operators to discover the static knowledge. You standardize it, systemizing, and then you just execute it. You don't need 4 separate bar, just you focus on the GENBA. That would be, I would think, the owners respond to this kind of thinking, because that's all of that is happening in the shop floor. Like, I've been to many times the good shop floor, and you will see like the team leaders, operators sort of talking, to each other, and they're trying to surface what's the gap between the understanding of this problem that they have, and they discover something, they document it, standardize it, and then that's being shared among among the organizations. So Nonaka's discovery is very interesting, but shouldn't be happening, or everything at GENBA is my sort of takeaway from this. But a lot of Japanese academic people start to focus on this ba. And if I summarize the kata and ba, kata is somewhat fixed, right? Kata is also used as a mold in Japanese, right? You have a molding machine, and you have a mold inside the machine, and that is called the kata. It's fixed, it's standardized. And then you have ba that's constantly changing. We don't know why, but something is going on inside this ba, that there's an energy there that constantly changing. So, and when I compare these two, it's not like I put it like, these two are fighting between each other, but it's not, it's a bad image. And the image that I think all academics are starting to say is this kata inside a company, and that's important. When you define the knowledge or the information of the standard way of treating things, you should have a kata, and you make that efficient as much as possible. But then once in a while, you can't keep using that kata. We have to reflect on ourselves. Okay, the market, which is ichiba in Japanese, is changing. And if that market is changing, we need to adjust ourselves in a bar. And we have to create a bar where we can sort of subjectively look at our models and reflect on it and improve it, right? And this thinking, I think, sort of connects to our original discussion that we did on podcast, because we talked about mechanism and system as one of the interesting thing about TPS is like we always talk about standardizations, and we were talking about very strict mechanism so that the operation were going on. For example, inside standardized work, when we make a standardized work and we apply it among the line, we come up with this theoretical manpower, right? And we allocate the manpower according to the theoretical manpower. But then we also create a system, because we know that if we allocate the people with theoretical manpower, when there's a slight problems, we can handle those problems. So we add the team leaders, right? And that's something that, and also mechanism will not run if they don't have a shortage of people, and sometimes people get sick, people get absent. So we keep a reserve labor. We keep this kind of additional people around the mechanism so that we can respond to some kind of abnormality happening inside the mechanism. And that system is used for Kaizen too, right? Because a lot of kata we talk about is like, okay, operators and deep leaders daily, they will have a problem happen on the shop floor, and they will respond to the problems, and they will take care, work on the Kaizens. But also it's important for the management is to design workshops, jishukens, or quality circles, or bears, right? And some companies like to create a format in this, but a lot of cases, there are cases where, there's not defined theme, or they don't know what to do. They just say, okay, this place has a problem, let's go and understand the problem. It's quite free. Obviously, there's a time frame that we want to accomplish the goal, and there's some target, but in some cases, target is up to the workshop at the higher level one. In fact, one of the OBEA example that Itani used was the OBEA that Honda created long time ago, right? In this OBEA, the CEO of that time, Fujisawa, collected all the directors into one meeting room. And he said, okay, you guys work here. And the directors asked Fujisawa, okay, what's our agenda? What's our target? And Fujisawa said, no, there's no agenda or topic. You guys come up with anything. And he just left the room. And at the beginning, right, these executives and directors were confused because they were typically giving the goal and typically giving a routine to, right? I need to push the stamps on this document, approve or disapprove. That was their working model. But now they are in this room, they don't know what to do. At the beginning, they were confused, but as the time happened, they start to communicate more between these groups. And one time there was a crisis happen, but because all this director was in one room, they were able to respond much faster than the traditional kata mode of business. And each executive of a different functionality start to understand each other better, and the quality of information sharing went so much better after the OBS system was implemented. And there was no format or anything in this OBS that we saw created. It was completely blank sheet of paper. And Fusel was super happy with this, what happened. And he said that in the traditional organization, he couldn't, if every decision was up to him to make the decision, it would be too slow and he couldn't have made the decision. So that doesn't mean Honda doesn't have any kata, right? There's always this two hybrid system or something bar is bigger that surrounds the kata to constantly change the kata, improve, adjust to the market changes. And there's still a lot of debate going on in this Japanese business academy, and I think a very interesting debate that's relevant to us is this knowledge and information emergent or intentional, right? Is there like Fujitawa said, like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's collect these people, let's see what happens. Or there's some kind of intentionality, right? Because what I've seen is that in Jishken or Obeya or any kind of workshop, by the time you select who's going to participate in the meeting, there's somewhat expectation on what's going to happen out of that workshop. It's the organizers or the manager who organizes this kind of workshop have to carefully select who's going to participate, because that will decide the outcome of the event. Obviously, they will work hard and they will do their best, but it's also interesting to see how we mix those people create some outcome. And as you get good at it, you sort of have some kind of expectation by selection of the people. Another thing is about the virtual and the real GENBA thing, right? Because when I study about the knowledge management, and I'm not talking about the knowledge management that was written by Nonaka, it's the knowledge management that taught generally around the world. Is like, okay, knowledge management is about internet. It's about this computer system that stores all the knowledge and people can access any time kind of thing. And Nonaka openly said he regrets that, after he writing a book about knowledge management, that people interpret it as this is about the computer system only. He was not saying such a narrow thing, although he didn't deny the value of having some kind of virtual internet connection of knowledges. But he's also saying that the bar is not limited to virtual space. It's actually the GENBA is also, he also highly respects the GENBA too. He's seeing some kind of hybrid system of the GENBA and the virtual world. And obviously for us, the TPS guy, we always say GENBA, GENBA, GENBA. And I think that's also true. But then I would add what I said in Tammy's place is that information and knowledge is not just among people. Machines, the way the machines are designed or the layout of the machine or how we use the machine itself is already a huge accumulation of informations and knowledges. And that creates some kind of interaction with people. Same thing with material, same thing with methodology. We might be using the same exact word or methodology, but how you use it, when you use it, creates a huge difference in the meaning of it. And so why I think GENBA is important is that it's not just this the interaction of the human that creates informations and knowledge. It's actually with the machines and materials, right? Like somebody design a material that has a huge know-how and knowledge of the engineers, designers, or bias sometimes, right? The way it's designed. And sometimes that's the root cause of a problem, and we need to understand that. And the engineer might not be working in the company anymore, but we can understand what his philosophy was by looking at the drawing. So there are many forms of information, and that information is not limited to something that we can digitalize. There's something that's happening in between people. It's happening with, in my opinion, poems. So that's the reason why I want to go to GENBA, is that sometimes the actual material might speak more than any other information that I've seen in the world, right? A defective component speaks more than whatever the brainstorming that they're doing in the workshops. So the summary of the thinking in the business is that Itami and Nonaka and all of people are talking about this interesting information and knowledge exchange that's happening inside a bar. A free flow of information, free generation, and then free conversion of that information into a more explicit knowledge. And this double loop model is something that I think we in Japan is thinking right now is, okay, we need kata. We don't deny kata, but having a kata and thinking that that will solve any issue is wrong. We need to create a bar where we can freely change and experiment and move on to a new mode. Companies that successfully have created a lot of interesting bar inside the organization on top of kata, and that's why it's successful. Now I know that in outside Japan, Toyota kata is very popular, right? And I will say that yes, I shouldn't say yes. When I saw the book, I was a little bit confused because I already knew about this kata and ba relationship that was discussed in Japan. And I would say a lot of cases, the TPS guy is saying focus on the ba is what I would say more closer to their thinking than kata. For example, problem solving, I never seen a format or A3. I've seen so many A3 from them, but a lot of them will say there's no format to this thing. You can write any way you want. It's a white sheet of paper. Try to describe the way you think the best to communicate to the people. And there's a lot of trial and errors, but formality is something other than the standardized work. I haven't heard from them. They are very open-minded about it. And yes, there might be some kata, but it's also a changing thing. So, and change is the most important thing for them. And creating this sort of a bar where they can try things is far more important than creating a kata. So I'm a little bit confused with that message. Also, like another example is like 2009, when Toyota had a huge recall issue in United States about the format issue. The first thing they did is like they collected all the people, quality related people. I'm not sure if it's quality related, but they said that they created this bar where all the functionality came together, and Dre sort of listed out what are their current approach on quality, and then they had a discussion on how can they improve that system so that they don't have this kind of recall again. I mean, they still have recalls, but they sort of revised it. They created this free space where they can discuss theory. It wasn't like, okay, here's the standard practice. Okay, what's our objective? What's our target? No, they didn't have that kind of thing. It was a free environment where these key people meet and sort of discuss what's the next step. I mean, what's the problem? And they sort of test their hypothesis through. So creating a bot has far more important meaning for us. And I hope that we don't get stuck on. I think you had a podcast with Sam about this same topic about creating too many boards, right? Don't worry about the kata. I will focus more about the bar. Then the final topic of the three circle is the science of bar. And I'm talking about this physics. Why suddenly I'm talking about physics? Well, I will talk about that because inside physics, I put the yellow circle on the bottom. This kind of thing is called ba in Japanese. And what is it? It's the field. In physics, we have field. And when this concept of field came to Japan, the Japanese physicians start calling that ba. So field in physics is ba. For example, electrical fields, right? And electrical fields, the relationship of the electrical element, and how those movement of the electrical element impacts and creates a dynamic energy among the field. In Japanese, it's called denba, and that's the electrical field. And then there's also the magnetic field, right? There's a flow of electricity creating a magnetic field on the bottom, and this kind of particles creating some kind of flow of energy, right, among the magnets. And this in Japanese is called jiba. So this kind of might feel strange because I've been talking about a lot of society kind of thing, or social aspect or human relationship aspect of things. And suddenly I start calling this physics bar. But it's actually, this idea came from when I was reading Itamisu's book, because he starts saying is that inside a bar, the information or the emotional connection between people is somewhat like this physics field relationship. Something, when I look from outside, something is happening, but you can't clearly see it. But once you start defining this elements, and then there's a movement of those elements inside the field, you start to understand the human as the bar better. And that applies to human relationship too. Like, what did this small signal mean? And what did he or she saw that signal, therefore they changed the opinion of the bar. So what I'm trying to say is, we Japanese have this tendency to call something a ba when there is the space where something is happening. I don't know what, but something is happening. Something mysterious is going on, right? Because originally it was God's work, which was a natural phenomenon that we cannot explain why it's happening. But then you start identifying the elements and factors inside the space, and then you start to see the interaction between them. And then you start to coming up with the rules and logic behind, okay, how these elements interact, how these elements moves. And then you start carefully observing it. You start to understand the science behind the field. And this applies equally to physics bar. It also applies same for the human relationship, because we should look at the subconscious aspect. And then when I think about this, it's think what Toyota production system is saying about the standardized work, right? Because when you go to the shop floor and you might see those operators and materials and machines moving randomly, you won't understand anything. And what we do is, let's define the work of the workers. And inside this standardized work, we have work elements. Once we define the elements, we define, the cycle times and the movement inside those elements. And then when you combine these things and define the role, that becomes the standardized work. And when every operator is following the standardized work, the material flows and the information flows, and that's create a better output. So, and any deviation from the standardized work is captured for a deeper investigation to understand the root cause of that problem. And just like the scientists discovered this electrical fields and magnetic fields and find out different reason why it could behave differently in different emotions, the science develops. Same thing is happening on the standardized work. Is every day, every moment, the team leaders and not just the team leader, but the entire management and the engineers are looking at these standardized works. And every time there's a deviation, they try to understand the root cause of that strange, unique movement, trying to understand the root cause. eliminate the root cause, and improve, so that the entire organization is constantly making a move, just like a physics field. And that's the final, what I've discovered so far is that, science, the physics defined it by, and the connect, there's a similarity between this physics bar and the cultural bar and business bar, is that we need to understand this element, we need to define how those elements behave, moves, interacts, and by coming up with the regularity or the law of these things, we can understand how the bar performs and give us a better understanding of how that moves. The collection of those regularity and law is kata. We need kata, but then we also have to say that we gotta give us a little bit more freer space, a bar, where people can continuously improve, continuously adjust to the changing market condition. So it's I've been talking so long, but the final part of my summary is that when you go to GENBA, don't just go and talk, check the KPIs and check the boards and stuff. And there's not just standard activity of things that are going on, but it's mix of many things, especially the cultural thing, the business aspect of information and knowledge, and science is going on. So when you go to GENBA, right, I want to see some kind of respect of people. Don't just say the word of respect of people. You go to GENBA to show your respect, but also you have to make sure people are respected in some ways. Do you see trust? That's like Ono said, if you are a trusted leader, people will come to you to show you, highlight you the problems and what the problems Kaizen they're working on. If they don't trust you, they will hide the problems. Simple. What is the information? What kind of information that you see? It's not just the information on paper. There's also information on materials, right? Scrap carries a huge amount of information, and you have a huge scrap and just sitting in the red big bin, and nobody's taking care of it. You are throwing away so much chunk of information that you can use on better purposes. What is the knowledge that is being generated? It's being shared and standardized among the organization. And by defining those elements and components of businesses, you can scientifically approach this thing. And BA is a place where you apply science and discover things scientifically. It's ongoing question that's going on over there. And that's why I ended with this. BA still has a lot of mysteries that we need to be figured out, but it's something that helps us understand. And when you go to GENBA, it's something that I always have him question. Is like I look at least these, 3 or 5 things that first, not just the KPIs. That's very nice, but also I try to see the cultural aspect, and then there's this business information and knowledge aspect. Are we, respecting people, trusting each other? Can I see that kind of thing? Can I see how are we treating new knowledges or ideas or generate information among things? And how scientifically approaching this thing. We shouldn't, I sometimes hate to use the word culture, because everybody says, oh, it's our culture, it doesn't work, but are we really approaching these things scientifically? And the starting point of my science of TPS start with standardized work. I want to define how elements are moving along and interacting first. And that's how I go to GENBA, is I always check standardized work. It's not because I want to see how it impact the KPI, but it's also what's the best form of science we have so far. Is it clear enough, and how can I improve that? And that's the whole story of BA.
And that's a wonderful story of BA. And I am flooded in this room with the spirit of BA. And what I like about what you said is all these 5 things: respect, trust, information, knowledge, science, is there in all the culture. So all this people who talk about culture, tell me one of these elements which is not present in all the cultures across the globe. Thank you very much, Obe-san.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
very often some of my people who listen to my vodcast ask me that why there is not much interaction with you don't ask questions to the guest, etc. So I tell them, my sensei is Sensei Masaki Imai. And one thing he told me straight is there are two ways of understanding or learning. One way is that even if you don't understand, keep asking questions. The Eastern way of learning is sit and meditate and understand. So if you are in a hurry to ask questions and interact, show your interaction with your guest speakers, you are not understanding because you are ready to ask questions before even understanding. So my request to all my viewers and this thing is please make comments and Obe-san will respond to you on all the questions and I will forward it to Obe-san, whatever queries that you have on LinkedIn or on my YouTube channel. So feel free to ask questions and we will respond to you. Thank you very much,
Yep.
Obe-san, and you can stop sharing so that I can see your handsome face once again.
I don't know how to do it. Oh, sorry.
Just stop sharing. There
Yeah.
you go. Thank you very much. It was really, very knowledgeable. I mean, I could grasp it, and it's what really caught my this thing is the kata being in the environment of Ba, and the environment keeps changing. Somehow, the minute you brought in that, to me, it looked like the Ishikawa diagram, where the environment was brought into the picture. Apart from the M's, even the environment was brought into the picture. I wouldn't know whether it is related, but there is something that works in an environment which is got so many variables that, as you said, we believed in God. Now we got some hint, but there are so many unknown variables that we will still respect the bar. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Obe-san, and catch you later next year. Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year to you. Take care.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
It's lovely. Thank you very
Yes.
much. I
Bye.
always learn something new from all my guests, and I share it across. So you will get a lot of questions and queries, and I know you're very good at understanding the questions, but you've got a unique way of understanding and then saying that I may be right, I may be wrong. But I know that you're 99 and 100% right, but then you make the other people think. Thank you very much. I've stopped recording.